Also, yesterday afternoon, amid the rubble of a small plane in the Virginia hills, the body of Audie Murphy was discovered. Murphy was the most decorated soldier of World War II, and later became a Hollywood celebrity. Near a mountain peak on a Friday afternoon, the plane crashed down. For a long time, the official account of Audie Murphy's demise was straightforward and sorrowful. The tragic plane crash in adverse weather took the life of a recognized hero. The audience bought into the tragic tale without doubt, but nothing ever quite fit. Whole time. There have been whispers of a government cover-up, missing records, and an unusual flight path. Thanks to fresh evidence, the truth is now speaking out. What, then, was the downfall of America's greatest hero? Why, therefore, did they not tell us? Come investigate the disappearance of Audie Murphy with us. The Ascent of Audie Murphy. Speculation over Audie Murphy's death has long persisted, although few have delved into the matter seriously. They saw the movies, the medals, and the war stories, and that was that. But now we know the truth about what happened to him. The truth is, it's terrible. It has far-reaching effects. First, we'll go back to the beginning and figure out how a scrawny Texan became the most decorated military hero in American history. Then we can reveal the portion that nobody talks about. On June 20th, 1925, in Kingston, Texas, a boy named Audie Murphy entered this world, although he was not given much. As sharecroppers, his family lived in extreme poverty. Even though the Great Depression was at its worst, the harsh Texas terrain provided few benefits. Of the 12 children born to the Murphys, Audie was the 7th. Life was more than just tough. Survival was key. The footwear, frequently exchanged. Food was never assured. Plus, Audie didn't have a particularly gentle or secure upbringing. Things like that shouldn't ever be a child's experience. What you are about to witness will alter your perception of Murphy if you believed that was it. In addition to living in abject poverty, Audie's father deserted the family, further shattering their already fragile world. Just absence, no justification, no second opportunity. Josie Bell, his mother, did her best to keep the family united, but she was exhausted from the effort as well. She died when Audie was 16, and with that, the last rock upon which his universe rested crumbled. He was unexpectedly left not only alone, but also responsible for his younger siblings after being orphaned when he was barely a teenager. Crying or mourning would have taken too much time. Everyone needed to do something, and Audie poured his heart and soul into it. With the 5th grade behind him, he decided to leave school. There were more pressing matters to attend to than getting an education. He picked cotton, hauled wood, and did odd chores for anyone who would pay him a few cents. He carried an emotional as well as a physical burden on his youthful shoulders. A wave of intense emotion washed over her. Something harsh and unwavering was chiseled into him throughout those formative years. Resilience that was self-aggrandizing. He had no aspirations of grandeur. Keeping his family alive was his only concern, gradually, day by day. Not seeing military service as a national calling, Audie viewed it as a brief opportunity to flee the suffocating clutches of poverty and duty when World War II broke out. He inquired about joining. The Navy rejected him. The Marines also accomplished this. All eyes were on him. Despite being just over 110 pounds and standing at 5 feet, 5 inches tall, he claimed he was inadequate. What they perceived as frailty was actually a source of unfathomable strength. He was eventually admitted by the army. Everything changed because of that one, yes. In 1942, while he was only a teenager, he enlisted in the army. He was sent abroad before he knew it, deployed to some of the most dangerous areas of World War II battle. From North Africa, he moved on to Sicily, Italy, France, and Germany in his military career. The young man who had worked as a cotton picker in Texas was now trudging through blood and muck while brandishing a rifle and enduring enemy fire in distant countries. He was rather silent. He made no attempt to astound. Only when it counted did AuDIE take action. A quiet bravery shone through in his actions. All it did was stand firm. Although he lacked physical prowess and height, he made up for it with speed, intelligence, and bravery when the stakes were high. He risked his life time and time again to save the lives of others. He remained standing amid the flames. He stepped closer to it. It wasn't ego that motivated him. His unwavering sense of duty, his devotion to the troops fighting by his side, and his will to survive were all major themes. A number of my fellow soldiers took note. Commanders took note. Respect wasn't the only thing AuDIE was gaining. A legend was being built by him. That myth was solidified on January 26, 1945. In the vicinity of Holzwehr, France, AuDIE and his battalion came under intense German fire. They were powerless against the overwhelming odds. AuDIE remained behind and told his soldiers to retreat. In order to operate the .50 caliber machine gun installed on a tank destroyer, he climbed aboard it while it was on fire, to evade a whole battalion of German soldiers. Despite being injured and exposed, he fought alone for over an hour, firing continuously while calling in artillery. There were bodies all over the place when reinforcements came, and none of them were Americans. He was awarded the Medal of Honor for such deed. That, however, was not all. AuDIE MuRPHY had amassed an unprecedented 33 medals and decorations during the war's latter stages. Among his decorations were 3 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, 2 Silver Stars, and the Distinguished Service Cross. He was also recognized by his French and Belgian allies. Among American soldiers, none came close. His advanced years added insult to injury. He had only just turned 19. AuDIE was rewriting the norms of bravery when most teenagers were worried about school or dances. He was directing troops. Still, the war had changed him in ways that no medal could undo. The people of the United States saw a hero in AuDIE upon his return from the war. However, on the inside, he bore unseen scars. The cries of the battlefield, the memory of those lost, and the burden of survival lingered. Whenever he appeared on parades or magazine covers, the crowd would roar in support. However, they were blind to his inability to sleep, his outbursts of rage, and the periods of stillness that followed when he was at a loss for words. He was always honest about the situation. His eyes betrayed his quiet demeanor and modesty. Their eyes had taken it all in. Even though he made an effort to lead a regular life, he couldn't shake the ghosts of his past. Now he was up against something equally savage as the German tanks he had fought alone. Return to normalcy following destruction. Notoriety was not his goal. Defeat was not in his vocabulary. He just kept on going. Furthermore, he persisted. He made a fresh start by reimagining his life in light of his experiences with hardship, grief, and conflict. His resolve, which had seen him through the trenches, accompanied him as he transitioned into civilian life. AuDIE didn't consider himself a legend. Despite the media claims to the contrary, he did not emerge from the battle a hero. In doing so, he entered a hitherto unseen battle. Although the uniforms had been removed, the impact of his past encounters remained with him. Even with the enthusiastic cheers of the audience, he could still hear the din in his head. Even though he had left the battlefield behind, the conflict continued within. He did his best to stay out of the limelight, but it seemed to follow him everywhere. People from out of town were interested in seeing photographs. At events, politicians wanted him. Unfortunately, AuDIE had little interest in drawing attention to himself. He was merely attempting to inhale. The peaceful times he had longed for never materialized. He bore the weight of the fallen, even as he wore the medals of his victory. It became evident when he gingerly reintegrated into civilian life that he still had more chapters to endure. It was far from over for him. Changing locations from trenches to studios, from battle zones to movie sets, was all it took. The following step wasn't easy, but then again, AuDIE Murphy never opted for easy. Still, he decided to press on. AuDIE was about to face a new type of battlefield. It included crowds that applauded without really comprehending the price he had paid. Red carpets instead of foxholes, and cameras instead of firearms. If you want to see more drama and highlight moments in his narrative, you'll have to keep watching. Murphy's life and career as a celebrity. After serving his country, AuDIE Murphy returned from the war with certain injuries. From the outside, he appeared to be a national hero, young, decorated, and beloved. Still, on the inside, he was mired in conflicts that had never quite concluded. Murphy stood out among his fellow veterans because he made no effort to conceal it. Everything he was going through was laid bare. Not PTSD was the term used back then. To everyone else, it was merely something troops were required to cross. However, Murphy was forthright in discussing his horrifying dreams, overwhelming dread, and the ongoing impact of his experiences. He wasn't acting bravely for effect. Instead, he spoke up about the indelible psychological wounds that remain long after the gunfire stops. It didn't stop Murphy from moving forward, despite the weight of his sorrow. He gave in to Hollywood's siren song and went all Hollywood. Not merely due to his good looks or heroic reputation, but also because no one else could tell his narrative. Based on his autobiography, he had a starring role in the 1955 film To Hell and Back. It was particularly remarkable since he played himself. It was unnecessary for AuDIE to put up a military show. Reliving it was all he did. Viewers were finally able to see the conflict from the perspective of an actual survivor, rather than a script or an actor. It was a smashing hit. Unlike other war movies, it struck a chord with audiences. Murphy continued to act after that. Straight away, he began starring in films that reflected his understated power. Westerns and war films in which the protagonist maintains silent resistance. He excelled in these roles. His presence was undeniable but unassuming. He appeared in more than 40 films throughout the 1950s and the 1960s, frequently playing the role of a lone gunslinger or a soldier with a troubled background. These positions were more than simply assigned to him. His roles were like a pair of well-worn boots. Because he had been through what those characters were supposed to endure, he bestowed onto them an additional quality. Murphy was expressive in many other mediums besides acting. Music was another outlet for him. His first tracks were simple, heartfelt country tunes, directly from the source. Also, you might be surprised by what we're about to disclose. Did you hear that some famous artists used his songs? I agree with you. Notable musicians like Dean Martin and Charlie Pride were among those who chose them. He had lived two lives by the time he was 30 years old, and songwriting provided him with another outlet for his emotions. The goal was not to become a famous musician. It came down to being able to speak your mind and finding the right words to express yourself. Murphy had established himself as a Hollywood regular by 1957. He co-starred with James Stewart that year in the film Night Passage. Murphy proved throughout the film that he could compete with more seasoned actors. In addition, it demonstrated that he wasn't merely an interesting sideshow, he could contribute something. He tackled 3 separate westerns in a single year in 1959, which was 2 years after that. He was able to showcase different aspects of his performance in each of them. One of them put him in a romantic relationship with Sandra Dee, who softened his typically macho persona. Another had him assume greater responsibility behind the scenes as a co-producer. He obviously wasn't there to merely receive orders. As he learned, he could mold the tale to his liking. Murphy started reaching out to more people when the 1960s came around. He had other intentions. He yearned to write. He was a silent but effective supporting actor in the silent film Cast a Long Shadow. He had an enormous impact on the production, even though he wasn't officially named a producer. His advancement in the industry was evident in these supporting roles. His role had expanded beyond that of an actor-turned-soldier. Becoming a storyteller was his calling. Along his path, television also played a role. Murphy and Thelma Ritter's 1960 appearance on StarTime marked Murphy's foray into a new kind of screen. This performance demonstrated that he was capable of more than simply gun battles and expressionless looks. His range was immense. The U.S. Army sent an invitation for him to participate in their television series The Big Picture the same year. He became the public face of the Army's mission for 3 episodes, going beyond just acting. In Broken Bridge, one of those episodes, he visited military installations all throughout the United States and Europe to demonstrate cutting-edge equipment. It demonstrated that he never strayed from his sense of responsibility and was a combination of narrative and service. His most successful collaborations on screen occurred with producers and writers who had a firm grasp of his work. One of them was Claire Huffaker, who penned the screenplays for Murphy's 1961 features Posse from Hell and 7 Ways from Sundown. Huffaker had a gift for revealing Murphy's inner strength, his quiet confidence and deep contemplation. His relationship with Willard and Mary Willingham also led to a significant partnership. Whispering Smith, Murphy's 1961 television series, was produced by Willard. They collaborated on several films, including Bullet for a Bad Man, Battle at Bloody Beach, and Arizona Raiders. I didn't stop there. That group was also instrumental in establishing Murphy as a major player in the Western cinema industry. They went so far as to pen his final leading role in a Western 40 Guns to Apache Pass. There was more to that writing than meets the eye. He was essentially bidding farewell to the subgenre he had helped create. Murphy was also not hesitant to take chances. He traveled abroad in 1966 to Israel to film Trunk to Cairo. He wed actress Wanda Hendricks in 1949. There was a lot of stress in their relationship, but it began off strong. Not much space for tranquility existed due to the public scrutiny, Murphy's PTSD, and the demands of Hollywood life. They broke up the engagement after 2 years. Murphy wed Pamela Opal Lee Archer only 4 days following the finalization of his divorce. She was never one for the limelight. Her background was as an airline stewardess. Murphy needed that kind of calm strength. He finally felt the peace he'd been searching for after years of turmoil while he was with Pamela. Terry Michael and James Shannon were their sons. Terry entered the entertainment industry after being born in 1952. A few years down the road, James arrived. Both sons provided Murphy with a feeling of stability. Not only was Pamela his wife, but she was also his rock. When he felt like giving up in the face of overwhelming odds, she was there to give him the strength to keep trying. Although Murphy's family life was far from ideal, it did provide him with some stability. A wife and children's peaceful presence gave a guy who had witnessed the horrors of war and the mayhem of fame the strength to press on. Nonetheless, unseen conflicts persisted behind the scenes. As we proceed into the last chapter of his account, it becomes clear that not all injuries were caused by the conflict, just as not all adversaries were present on the battlefield. Prepare to have your assumptions about Murphy's demise shattered by what's about to unfold. Keep watching as we dissect it. Tragic news. AuDIE Murphy has passed away. The official cause of AuDIE Murphy's death was a fatal plane crash that occurred on May 28, 1971. Rough weather caused the small twin-engine Aero Commander he was piloting to crash near Catawba, Virginia, over Brush Mountain. At the time, the explanation was brief and depressing. The plane crashed into the slope due to bad weather, low visibility, and the pilot's mistake. Many people thought that was the end of the story, the tragic loss of a family man, movie star, and war hero. However, other people felt that the details weren't quite correct, particularly those who were close to Murphy or who watched his life carefully. Concerns began to surface not long after the accident. For no apparent reason, the plane's very low flying altitude over perilous terrain caught the attention of onlookers. It was never possible to retrieve all of the debris. The final report did not entirely align with the flight data. No one had the resources or means to go farther into the crash scene, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. There was no modification to the official cause. But even so, readers of the article felt like something was missing, or perhaps even concealed. Theoretical frameworks for various approaches evolved over time. There were rumblings about shadowy government agencies and organized crime. Some speculated that it might have been political or business-motivated personal enemies. These weren't mere urban legends. They drew strength from actual facts that contradicted the standard account of the accident. During his stay in Hollywood, Murphy dealt with influential people and had connections that extended into government circles. In the years following World War II, there were murmurs that he may have stumbled into secret documents. If that were the case, it would lend credence to the notion that he may have been perceived as a danger to someone. No one in Murphy's family ever bought into the conspiracy theories. At the very least, they pretended to believe the official story. They were far from content, though. They had to deal with the anguish and unresolved questions every day. His loved ones ignored the suggestions of foul play when they were raised, yet not entirely convinced. The main thing was that I didn't want to think the worst. Bereavement is a difficult enough thing. The addition of secrecy and treachery made progress more difficult. Decades passed with the truth buried beneath the stillness that surrounded the disaster. But then a pivotal event occurred. Hold on, because we are about to spill the beans on something quite surprising. New perspectives on the disaster emerged as a result of technological advancements and the public release of more Cold War-era information. Curious about what might have been missed, a team of private investigators decided to revisit the investigation. They weren't relying on assumptions this time. They could conduct tests using meteorological data, flight logs, and debris samples that weren't available in the early 1970s. Declassified documents that suggested a broader picture were also at their disposal. The story was completely altered by what they discovered. Submerged in the debris, they found evidence of interference with the plane's control systems. Nothing about the cutting or rerouting of the wires could be explained by the effects of age or collision. Here, we are not referring to haphazard mechanical breakdowns. They appeared to be premeditated attempts to trigger a collision. There was evidence of sabotage, but it wasn't overt or dramatic. As the crew continued to investigate, it became increasingly apparent that this wasn't a mere unfortunate oversight. Afterwards, the most disturbing finding was made. Someone who had been quiet for many years finally spoke out. This source asserted that Murphy's whereabouts had been monitored and that he had discovered sensitive information on clandestine operations in the months preceding the disaster. Some high-ranking officials were finding Murphy problematic, according to this evidence. He was too knowledgeable to remain silent indefinitely. Even though it hurts to think about, the crash might not have been accidental. A cover-up may have occurred. If this is accurate, it suggests that someone went to great lengths to make the accident appear to be a tragic accident. The world was led to believe it was simply unfortunate luck, since the harm was concealed under a charming narrative. However, that version was rendered invalid by the new findings. Something sinister was at work, what with the sabotage, the monitoring, and the lack of speech. The issue of the flight's malfunction was now moot. After that, it became clear who wanted AuDIE Murphy out and why. A fresh wave of tragedy washed over Murphy's loved ones when the case was reopened. It had progressed beyond a simple loss. Subject matter: treachery. It is one thing to experience the anguish of losing a spouse, parent, or sibling. The possibility that someone had done it intentionally, though, gave it a new dimension. They had spent a great deal of time attempting to recover from what they believed to be an accident. The prospect that he had been deliberately targeted, silenced, and stolen from them was now something they had to face. He may have been muzzled by the regime he had previously served. The way he was discussed shifted due to that potential. A symbol of courage, he had become more than that. He represents the consequences that ensue when authority betrays its responsibility to safeguard its citizens. Your stay with us is greatly appreciated. What do you think about the claims made about Murphy's death? Leave a comment below and tell us what you think. Please subscribe, like, and share the video if you found it entertaining. Additionally, you will find the following video entertaining. Just click on it.